this is our last session. We get to ask anything. The audience can ask us anything, or we could ask each other anything too. So, well, maybe not anything. I don't know if that's really.
Well, you can ask. You may not get an answer, but.
Yes.
Ask hard question. All right.
Well, I'll ask Stuart a question if we're all sitting here. So Stuart, from your end, how's supply coming out of Sri Lanka now? Is COVID really impacting that? I understand that they're having some real problems there.
Yeah, they're having a national lockdown again. So that's obviously stopped mining, and for most people that's stopped cutting as well.
Right. Yeah, it's what I'm.
But overall, during the last.
Better turn off your video again.
Yeah. Okay, try it again.
Yeah, these technical issues are annoying, isn't it? I was going to say that over the last year or so, then it actually hasn't been that bad. They started off handling the situation really well in Sri Lanka. They locked down quite quickly, and they weren't getting too many problems. So we were able to keep our guys working most of the time. And then it got kind of progressively worse until about maybe 5-6 weeks ago, something like that. And then they've had, like I say, the last few weeks they've had national lockdown, and that looks like it might be extended as well. So I think they've suffered since the situation deteriorated in India. Then
right,
they've had the knock-on effect in Sri Lanka as well.
Right. Well, sort of for jewelers or designers that are listening, COVID is still going to have an impact for a significant amount of time. It may look like everything's getting better here, which it is, but that doesn't mean it's getting better all along the supply chain. So be patient with people if you can't find what you need right away. I know in our case, the Chinese just locked down all of Guangdong province. So we can't do crap right now. We have packages sitting in FedEx all over the place there. So, and that just happened 2 days ago. So it's still a very moving target for the supply chain.
Same in Brazil. It's been ongoing waves and, decline, and now there's problems all over, mostly in the huge urban centers, but also in the Amazon basin. It's been bad. So logistics is tricky, definitely. Less flights, harder to move things around. I've figured out how to get my goods out from the mine into Minas Gerais, and then, working with a broker there, able to export. But it's not easy. It's
more work, yes. So.
Definitely, and also in Africa, it's getting better here, but the situation is gonna change as it's approaching winter, and like in East Africa, rainy seasons. Already last year been affected by preventing reaching sites with the miners gathering, been restricted by government most places. And the miners, they just broke out that rules, and we want to survive, we want to go mine out, dig, but still cases are increasing. Situation might also change at the supply chain for us, depending on where we're sourcing, and they're gonna be COVID really, it's gonna have really a huge impact that's coming few months ahead, with the winter coming up, the rainy season up. The lifestyle is no lockdown like here. People have to survive, have to keep moving. So I think, we have to be patient to each other, for everybody. And also it's going to affect us on the cutting side as well, if we're sending parcels overseas to get cut. I mean, last year we took us like 3-4 months to get here, or 5 months. So, no parcel been stuck on the shipping. There was lockdown in Sri Lanka. So, I mean, still Thailand, the cutting centers, India. I mean, there are going to be a lot of impact unless we're cutting locally. We're recovering here. It's getting better, but other part of the world is still going. So it's going to have an impact.
We have a couple questions. Interesting. Allison from Canada has asked all of us, recognizing that you've all worked together for some time, is there anything new you've learned from each other this weekend?
Well, I will make a quick comment on that. I don't know that it's new, but many of us have to look at, especially those that have been in business for a long time, have to look at the people that we associate with and say, as a team, we have a lot better option of making things work than individually. That's pretty different from the way, like Jay mentioned that when in his talk earlier, that's quite different from the traditional way our industry is run.
Yeah. And I would add to that what we're doing as a team together, creating strength through this venue, we are inviting all the attendees, jewelers and retailers, to become part of that same team. We just expand so much better that way.
Yeah, just some remarks about the learnings from each other. I think we all have a background, we all have a history, and every time we get together, be it in this sort of fashion or whether it be face to face, we're all growing in our understanding of each other individually about our backgrounds and our stories, and I think that just adds strength to our own capabilities as a group. It was interesting. I had a conversation with the designer the other day. I mean, she wasn't aware that this group isn't facilitated by one person. This isn't a promoted event. This isn't an event that's sort of been organised by other people. It's been organised by the people you see in this program here right now. We're the people that have made this happen because we've committed to making it happen and wanting to make a difference. And that being the case, we, I think, guard that independence fairly vigorously, to the extent of being very, I suppose, aware and wary about the circumstances, what generally prevails in this industry with promoters and other activities and the like. So it is quite a unique situation in terms of what we do and how we understand each other's personalities and businesses, and how we continue to grow in that space as well. And for mine, that's the way I would want it to be maintained. I have no desires to enable others to come in and run the show. This is our show. This is our business. There is no unilateral decision making here. It's a collective and collaborative decision making process in whatever we do. And whether that be in shows, whether that be in activity, whether that be in promotion, whether that be in supporting other initiatives, which in fact it might well be that we go down a pathway of doing other things and we've had discussions about that as a group. So this group isn't necessarily set within a certain range of paradigms. It does think broader, and there are possible initiatives into the future beyond shows and activities that this group could well grow and develop into. But we're comfortable with each other, we know each other well, and that continues to grow over time.
That's fantastic. I agree, and I know that everyone's been. It is a very good working group, and it's a very good kind of cooperative group here, and all on the same mission, coming from different areas. I wanted to jump in for the question about somebody wanting to know about Eder Oberstein, sorry, bad pronunciation, in Germany. I actually am getting ready to send, and I have it in my office, a piece of citrine this big to two women there who aren't the big names in carving, but I know them from Tucson. One, they're both artists by background and live there. And I'm going to have them be carving part of that citrine into a lion that was inspired from one of my first pieces of jewelry that I bought as a teenager. The money went back to help save lions and to help fund works around saving lions. So for that question, I know, and I have it in the other room, the citrine is like this big, and I was thinking of saying, who else wants something carved out of the citrine? And really, I have a list of all of the cutters in Germany to talk to them about, do you want some, let's start working on where your amethyst is from. Let's start working on where your citrine is from. So let me know, because the two women that I'm working with and that I've bought from before in Tucson are great. And when I said to Jess, just a quick one on our Virtue Gem team, I'm like, I don't know, Jess, should I go with one of the big names in Germany, or there's these two women that I really like? She looked at me and she's like, duh. So
Yeah.
Anyways.
I know a lot of the artists and cutters in that region, friends with the Moonsteiners, etc. However, now I would, and Eric can confirm this, the business model there about sourcing is pretty much the traditional. There's a lot of competition among themselves, so they're very secretive about who they deal with and where they get it. They want to be the first to jump on anything new and tie it up. That's just sort of the classic gem supplier model. So that's pretty much the way it is there. Now there are, I'm sure there's a new generation and some of the younger folks are thinking more in the lines of us, but my experience is that it's still old school model. And there's amazing companies doing amazing work, but it's pretty secretive overall. Would you agree, Eric?
Yeah, it's pretty traditional business model for the jewelry and for the gem industry. Yes. So the question about what else new did we learn? I actually made a note from one of the participants that talked to me yesterday, which I thought was a pretty interesting sort of question, in that some of you makers actually at times also cut some of the stones that you use, or you have to adjust them. And he said, is there anything out there that would be a reference on safety for people cutting gemstones? And I thought, well, again, my normal thing is, well, how risky can it be to cut a gemstone here and there? But then I started thinking about it, and that's probably a good idea to come up with something like that, in that things like malachite is very toxic if you're not careful how you cut it. Abalone is very toxic if you're not cutting it really carefully. So there's a variety of different things like that we probably could put together at least some guideline information. I thought it was an interesting question. So that's one thing I learned, and that came from one of the, not speakers, it came from one of the people who was joining us and looking at what we do.
I just see a question here about when is the next gathering. Well, stand by, because we're already having conversation about the next gathering. Without going into any detail, nothing is definite or planned, but we hope that later in the year that there are opportunities for us, for some of us, perhaps all of us, to gather together in a physical location or physical locations prior to the end of the year. Now,
Tosh.
So we're not sure yet whether this is going to happen or not. but it's very much on our mind as a matter for discussion. In fact, probably at our next meeting, we wanted to let this event go forward, and I think the next series of meetings we'll be having, this will be a topic in terms of going forward for the remainder of the year into a couple of choices or options for some physical shows. It's quite possible that we will be arranging a hybrid type event as well, in coordination or in concurrence with the physical show. We think that the hybrid style event, or this online event, can work in concurrence with a physical event to enable some of us as suppliers to attend if we can't attend physically, but also designer makers as well to attend. But again, as I say, nothing is formed, nothing is firm, but it's very much on our agenda for discussion.
So we've gotten some feedback, I think, at the tables and in conversations at the little social hour last night. We've gotten some feedback about the sessions, and that people have found them really helpful. So I think we would love to actually hear more from you as attendees. We will be sending through Andrea Hill and Works World, we'll be sending a survey, hopefully in the weeks following this event. And I would encourage you, if there are subjects that you are interested in, to maybe put those in as potential conversations. We want to be able to answer your questions and be able to address issues that you find interesting. And so I would urge you, as we do this planning and discussion, as Ian mentioned, and I do think that some speaking, some sessions, and those could be broadcast, via a vehicle similar to this. So even if it is in person, we could still share those sessions. So I would love it if people could actually provide some feedback when you get the notice in your email that there is a survey to kind of follow up. I really encourage you to respond to that and to make your needs and wishes known, because that helps us tailor these events to actually meet your needs.
Yeah, I got the same feedback from some of the attendees, how, especially for new jewelers, new designers, found this very helpful. I think the information that we put out together, because we're all individual and we have unique ideas amongst us, among the normal collaborative ideas, they said it was very helpful. So I think that's one thing that we've created with this particular session, this particular venue. If these sessions are going to be available on YouTube, that we can share with lots of people down the road, it might, I think that's been valuable.
They're actually, day one sessions are already on the ethicalgemsuppliers.com website. So when Ian says stay tuned, if you can check the website periodically, you can go back within the next couple of days. All of the sessions will be edited and available through links to YouTube, but they'll be on the ethicalgemsuppliers.com website. And also, hopefully you're following along on at ethical, let's see, what's our account again? It's
Ethical Gem Suppliers
let me just make sure. Yeah, it's Ethical Gem Suppliers, just all one term. And we will be posting information as we finalize dates and we get more information. We'll be finalizing it there, but make sure to use that the website as a resource.
Any more questions coming in? I don't see any questions.
Yeah, just to add to what everyone is saying, how important your feedback is, let us know, how frequently you would want to have these. Would it be a quarterly thing? How helpful is it for you to have it often? Do you want it just sparsely? And topics as well. are we being repetitive? Is there anything that we haven't addressed? Is there things that we're just repeating? Just letting us know. We're going to be so grateful if we can get that feedback. Like Monica said, that way we can tailor it to just keep refining the experience for our audience.
Any other questions that maybe the group has for each other? Anything that we need a little more clarification on, or?
Well, I have a question to pretty well everybody. I mean, does anyone have any intentions in the? I'm talking into the future now, I suppose, and I'm not seeking any information necessarily that people feel a bit awkward about. But is there any intentions of bringing any other particular gemstones into the market? Does anyone have any new initiatives that they're working on who would like to elaborate a little bit further on with bringing new material into the market?
I do. And I'm going to hit everybody with a surprise. Born and raised in Colombia, I entered the business through my uncle's family business, and, fell in love with it, never left. And he deals with Colombian emeralds for over 50 years. So I'm on the starting stage of bringing, a really interesting proposition within that aspect of what I can do, what I can bring. Traditionally, my uncle, the family business worked from the office, and you buy directly from the dealers, and that's where it is. But there wasn't really a compilation of mine pit provenance information. So I'm working on that. I'm hoping to bring that at some point as an offering with the Colombian emeralds. So we'll see how that works. Yet to be seen.
That's great.
I'm so excited about that, Jay. I hope you make it happen. We need some ethical emeralds in the mix.
Exactly.
I would like to bring.
I know Hewan has, but the Colombian, it's exciting.
I love the Colombian myself.
Do you have the triapic ones too? The ones with the design of
the Emerald Trapiche.
Do you have those?
Yeah.
I thought you did. I see your uncle have them.
I have some news, I guess. For our group, I would like to bring in the topaz that I've been working on in the Amazon, and I think I can perhaps do that. And I would like to bring in colorless topaz as an alternative to colorless whatever. They're not so expensive, but they're beautiful. And secondly, there is a recent find of amethyst in Hondonia, also the Amazon, and I've been working with the family there, and I think they will fit all the criteria that we're looking for. And I just purchased some of this very unusual amethyst that has these trapezie formations in it, which is really interesting, twinning. But I'll once I have the material and polish some up and do some interesting cuts, I'll share it with you. But by Tucson next year, I should have some of that material at my booth, hopefully topaz too.
I am also going to be bringing, which I discovered Ethiopia has a blue chalcedony, and I've been working with the founders and the miner community, and which I was really excited to see that, and that's going to be my new additional material. And I'm trying to work, closely with the community of the miners, and still they don't think it's as much valuable. And it has a beautiful variety of it. So I would like to have, and definitely I'll have it already working with them, seeing the material we have secure with the community as to be one of their buyer, and that will be available in our coming up Tucson show.
Well, I want to cut some.
I'm going to bring, I already got you coming up for the rough to cut for yourself. So he told me that when I was in Ethiopia. So that
What
would
color
go
blue is it?
It's really
blue,
nice.
velvet, to purple and blue. It's like it has a range from little grayish to bluish to purple. It's a variety on its own. It has. So I mean, we're trying to select, but we're gonna be working with that material since I found out the person who discovered it, the community and the association. So support them, and I'm gonna be pretty much representing that to the US market, the Ethiopian blue chalcedony. That's going to be our additional material. And
That's exciting.
and tourmalines, pretty much we found certain tourmalines, but we need to get it identified by GIA still. It's a whole new material, dark purple.
Dark purple.
Dark purple, yes, very dark.
Oh, I want a piece. I want to see it.
I'll send you. Raf,
His
you can
ears are perked. He's like, is there Cooperian?
It is. I've never seen something like that. It looks really black, and then but when you light it up, it's deep purple.
Deep purple. It could be titanium.
Like
There were some deep purple crystals around Paraíba, not from the Paraíba mine, but and GIA found titanium in it, which was interesting.
I don't know what it is. We just need to.
Test it. There's another thing I'm bringing to Tucson that, in addition to what we do, I am going to include rough and crystals and crystal specimens, because that's also part of what we do.
Well, from our point, I guess we've designed a new series of cuts that we're doing to try and introduce a variety of things from the cutting point of view, and how we can apply that specifically to some of the lower valued material that comes out when we buy mine run. How do we find ways to utilize that? So we're doing those now, and actually some are looking really cool. And the one other thing that we put into cutting yesterday that I don't know, but it's pretty exciting. It's a real screaming blue moonstone from the United States. So we got the first shipment a couple of days ago and started cutting yesterday. So that's very early in that I haven't even seen the first stone, but at least the rough looks really nice.
Well, look, and I think this is a great example of the proactivity of the people around the table. The question wasn't a Dorothy Dixer. I didn't know that anyone was going to respond to it, but I'm glad that, Jay and I didn't talk about this beforehand, so it wasn't contrived. And I'm glad everyone chimed in there and made some responses, and I think it's great to see. I've just had a thought about this, and I think perhaps we as a group can talk about maybe featuring some of those introductions when they come along, perhaps at our next show, next event. I think it's a perfect opportunity to talk and enable whoever's doing that feature work to do a presentation on those pieces and that work and the story behind it and the challenges and all that sort of stuff. I think this is a perfect opportunity. So we'll talk about that and look at the ways and means we can actually bring those stories into our market.
I'm just curious if anyone in the audience would be interested in, because I've heard of a couple of initiatives and I'm just keeping tabs on them. They're still not really ready for prime time, but the idea of responsible artisanal diamonds. I feel like this comes up a fair amount in some conversations. There's some frustration that the gem fair diamonds, for instance, have not yet actually made it to market really for designers to really be using. And I've heard just anecdotally of a fair amount of interest. I'm hoping that some of these projects, which I think have been a little bit inhibited by COVID, but the idea of taking like a Moyo or a Virtue gem kind of approach to connecting with artisanal communities who are mining diamonds and creating some structure and some responsibility around that. So I'm hoping that maybe some of these projects might actually come to fruition again for a future event, future show. But I'm hoping that maybe, I don't know if anybody wants to reply in the chat if they would be interested in something like a responsible artisanal diamond source. I think that could actually be a really nice offering to kind of round out what we have here.
We started that process a couple of years ago in Brazil. Of course, that all fell apart for different reasons, COVID being one of the main things, but also the administration we began working with really wasn't truly receptive to what our ideas were. And it's just complicated. But down the road in the future, I think Brazil has potential to be an interesting source for indigenous mined diamonds, for example. But it's going to take a while. It's going to take a new administration. It's going to take time.
So Ian, is anybody going to be doing any mining out in Western Australia for diamonds once they...
Good question, Eric. We've not heard of anything on the grapevine over our way. I mean, our understanding is that the mine is basically closed now and that they're not producing any further. They have stocks, of course, and they're, dribbling those onto the market. There are a couple of I do watch the space a little bit. There are a couple of exploration companies actually doing diamond exploring up in that part of the world. Some have had some reasonably positive results, and I'm sort of keeping an eye on that. But it's all exploratory at this stage. But you just never know. I mean, it's an ancient land. There's deposits all around the place. Its probability is quite high. But as soon as I'm sure we'll all know as soon as something happens. But to my knowledge, there's nothing evident at this stage.
Right.
The hard truth with diamonds, especially non-alluvial sources, is that it's at least 8 to 10 years to get some numbers and see the viability business-wise.
That goes for all large-scale mines, pretty much.
True. But sometimes I figured, I'm talking out of a position of secondhand knowledge, like alluvial deposits like sapphires and things that are alluvial, it's much easier to figure out an immediate yield as opposed to, many years. And then you have to figure out if it's, if you're getting the sizes that if you're getting enough material out of, open pit mining and stuff. But so, yeah, I would love to see diamonds for peace, for example, come to full fruition to provide options for market. I would like to see diamonds for peace they're in Liberia, and they're very centered in helping, and then the humanitarian cause. So I think they're great. I would like to see DDI and their already a long track record of putting things together, to make sure that more of the larger production, it's more subdivided for the smaller players as opposed to going to the larger enterprise. They have to for financial reasons. I would like to see, I will keep an eye on what's coming out of the coast of Namibia. I don't know if everyone got a chance to read the Vogue article. Quendi and I discussed that. Really nice. They're calling it ocean diamonds, Quendi, if I'm right. Okay.
Yeah, yes, I actually hadn't heard about it either. And then someone forwarded me this article, and I thought it was really interesting about ocean diamonds and as a responsible option for diamonds, because they are being extracted not, environmentally it's better because they're just diving for them, and I guess they've run through alluvial and ended up at the coast of Namibia. So
Exactly.
it's got a very romantic story for marketing purposes, and calling it ocean diamonds. It's nice, but
Yeah, they've
I
been
also think maybe it's an interesting option for responsible source
they've
diamonds.
been successfully producing those for decades now, and I think they've tuned into the whole responsible sourcing. It's like, oh well, we're doing that, so let's obviously promote that.
Hmm.
That's Katie from San Francisco asks, do you know of a good source for anhydro quartz and cutters? Most anhydro quartz comes from Brazil, could be Madagascar, probably other sources in Africa. I don't know if you mean the mineral specimens or stones cut that have anhydro, but the Brazilian mineral dealers are typically where you find anhydro quartz that I know of.
Hmm. Where was this? Aren't they Pakistani sources as well for the ones that have the fluorescent and the oil?
Petroleum.
Petroleum, right?
Yeah.
Is that considered anhydro?
I think so.
Maybe so.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about the ones that light up? If you put like a UV light, it's fluorescent. Yeah, those are amazing. She's saying cabochons mostly as well.
Right. So finished, you're talking finished stones with anhydrous. That's what you're looking for.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Yeah. I can help. I know a lot of just the ones with the little bubbles or yeah. Katie, you can email me. You can chat with me at the table after this. I can help you find some, I think.
I have a discussion for us, the suppliers. In the 25 years, close to 30, that I've sort of witnessed how cutting moved from the US in New York and some areas moved overseas, I lost touch about the actual demographic of that specific labor market. And I wanted to ask Eric, perhaps also Ian, what are the outfits like for cutting? Not necessarily just one of a kinds, but like calibrated good or repetitive cuts, because you guys probably are doing most in that. What is the composition in these outfits? Is it a 20-person team? Is it a seasonal? My understanding from witnessing what happens in Bangkok is like you have certain teams that cut stones for a certain time, and then they move to another operation based on the demand for that comes to them, right? The production. And what is the size of the team? Question number one. And question number two, what is the composition of the age groups? Because I've started to sort of get the feeling that we're losing on the craft because the elders they're not teaching enough of that to the newer generations, and or newer generations aren't as interested to be that as a profession. I would love if you can shed some light on that, both of you.
Sure. Our cutting operation is a little different in that they're in-house and they stay with us. They don't move from cutting facility to cutting facility, but that is relatively common based on who has rough at the time, which makes it more difficult to track your cutting. But to your second part of your question, yes, it's a big issue. We just had to change some of our cutting in small stones because we got an email in from the workshop that we have to do less in the 1 millimeter and 1.5 and 2 millimeter because the workers are getting older and they can't see them as well. And we have very few new people wanting to come into it. So that's a challenge for us. And I think it's a challenge we saw in jewelry in the United States 25 years ago, but we see a lot of people wanting to come into it now. So I don't know if that's going to change, but a lot of cutting facilities have closed. A lot of those cutters have moved on to other sorts of work that at least is, working in an Apple factory. I don't mean an Apple iPod or phone factory. Doesn't sound very exciting to me, but it's not dirty and you have a nice cafeteria you go eat at, and that is a lot more appealing to some of the younger people now. So I think it is going to continue to be an issue. I think it will grow. And in natural stones, going to automated cutting is very difficult. Their yields drop through the toilet, if you put them on automatic machines. So, which also means that cutting probably is growing in the United States. And part of that is because it's shrinking overseas.
A few remarks about our circumstances, Jay, and really echoing a lot of what Eric's had to say there. We separate our cutting, and I'm talking mainly faceting here in this space, in terms of the larger faceted stones and the smaller calibrated collections. The larger stones aren't that difficult as such merely because of the nature of the sapphire rod. My business partner preforms pretty well everything above a carat because of the nature of the gem, the orientation of the gem, the yield, etc., etc. Now that's a big ask and it's a big job, but he loves it and that's what he does. And then we move that up to our partner's factory in Thailand, and it's a single guy, one man, and he is dedicated to us, and we are very dedicated to him in continuance of supply. So we have to manage our supply to ensure that he's got work on a continuous basis, because we can't overload and then have nothing and then overload. So we're obliged, if you like, to ensure that he's got continuous work. When he gets pressure and there is an overload, he will employ. He's got a couple of young female cutters working for him, a couple of young girls, and I haven't got any imagery of this yet, but I'm getting it very soon. And he will engage them in that process. Similarly, with smaller calibrated stone, we don't cut anything, or we don't get anything cut less than 2 millimeters anymore, because no one wants to cut it. We can't get anyone to cut that size gem, and 2 millimeters is a struggle, and we have to wait a long time to enable that to happen. Merely because of the lack of supply of people wanting to cut that size gemstone. So there are challenges. It's pleasing to see that there are still some younger people coming into the market, some young Thai cutters, but there's no question about that there is an exit in terms of a generational shift, but also in terms of a standard of living shift, in terms of the development of the country, the broader macro approach to the development of the country has realised the simple fact that the younger generation has better opportunities in work, more educated, other opportunities, more working in other different occupations, and they choose to work. But in our case, it hasn't pressured us so much at this point in time to be overly concerned about it, but we can see emerging concerns in that regard. I hope that's answered the question.
Totally did. And if someone else wants to provide their experience about that, that would be great. I see it in New York as it used to have, and I'm narrowing it down to diamond cutting, of course. But there used to be, you can still see the offices with all of the benches, 20, 30, 40 benches, and only 2 or 3 cutters that are actually having, employed full time. There used to be a time where there wasn't enough material to provide work for all the works, and I'm sure now outside of the US, they're seeing that struggle. You got to keep him on the payroll with material. And nowadays is, there are challenges. When I purchase recycled melee, they come with more headaches than advantages, because they're so cheap in there. If you want them to be repurposed, you gotta, baguettes, for example, they are almost always chipped at the corners. And I'm happily bring them over to my cutter who handles my point 50 and up. And he's like, Jay, I don't have the machine that can handle your size. I don't have the arm. I have the wheel. I can help you. I'm your friend. But I can't do it here. And I said, okay, cool. So can you refer me to someone? No. Send them out to India, send them out to China, send them out with everyone's ready with all the right arms and the right mechanics to do this. And it's more cost effective for you. You end up, I circled back, only in the diamonds there. I circled back to the area that sometimes the bulk of the cost of the small stones, it's in the labor, because it's so intense. Right. You pay per hour, and you need to account for loss of material, and depends on the condition. So it's an interesting market. And I wanted to bring the question to you guys, because before all of the labor moved out of the US, I never heard the chatter that this is not possible. But it's shrinking. It's a shrinking practice, and it's an art to put these things together and to make them work. And just in diamonds, which is transparent, all you need is the brilliance. But with color stones, it's even more challenging, because you want to orientate color. If it's a dark, rough piece, you want it to open up. Absolutely. It's just an ocean of options. Someone else will chime in with their experience, maybe Hewan, in her challenges there.
Yeah, I think you guys cover pretty well, and I know cutting is a major challenge in our industry, as buying rough and getting cut the right way. Whom to find? You trust your material to be cut, and as you're saying now, melees and small sizes are a major challenge as well, and labor intensive, and that's what makes them really expensive too. And a loss of materials it happens, and finding really a cutter, even cabochons nowadays, is even difficult. That's why we're trying to encourage certain kind of designs, cabochons, or to be cut at source, and also encouraging mostly, free forms, different styles, where I've been really inspired and really amazed by mostly Eric's, the way they come up, being out of the usual, the jewelry design styles. Collaborated, round, brilliant, oval. And we're seeing a lot of freeform with Ian's stones. I've seen with Anza gems, with Monica and stuff. Brian have a beautiful, collection of tumble, drilled, we should encourage more of these things, since the cutting part of the industry is also facing a challenge and shifting. I have talked to some people in Germany and Japan. Melees are moving, and automatic machines, like Eric said, throwing all those natural stone to a machine is literally a damage. If you really know about your gemstones, it need to be looked at through. It gotta be sourced for clarity, inclusions, all those things. Cutting plays a major role, and for me, knowing all those factors, what makes a beautiful gemstones is part of is the way it's cut, and the way the symmetry. And now with designers, we're moving pretty much free forms, and not all stones can be cut too. I've been providing some rough emerald crystals. It's no worth cutting them. Just sell them as they are. Inspire designers. Our designers are all artists. So just putting it out there, encouraging lapidary around the source and different kind of means and different kind of shapes. And I mean, that's one thing we should be encouraging us as as a supplier as well. And I'm being grateful, really. Stuart, 1948, Sri Lanka, they've been helping out with our emerald cutting. For me, I see the cutting is a very important part of the gemstones. So it's a great question you brought up, and thank you. And most of you covered it up.
Which, just in follow up to that, because Hewan and I were talking about it at our table yesterday, I think. We hear about, cutting at the source and cutting in Africa and stuff like that, which is all good. And I know that there's a lot of movement trying to do that. But I keep talking to African countries particularly, and they don't seem to want to hear this, but beads are a huge market. And right now, if we ship a container of bead rough from Beira to China, it costs $4,000. At the rates of labor in some of the Southern African countries, it's cheaper to cut them in the country than to pay for shipping. And nobody wants to seem to think that's a big deal. So it's not just trying to say, look, we want to try and help people get more for their material at the source. This is an actual business thing. It would be a wise business decision, and there are plenty of workers there wanting to do it. When those countries ask me about cutting, that's what I always tell them. It's not sexy, it's not cool, but it's a wise business decision. And then from there, you can see who does good work with their hands, who can polish, and maybe then you can start moving those up. But certainly in my mind, that's the place to start, and to help train cutters that will be handling this 20 years from now.
Yeah. Can I share my personal experience? Because a challenge for me is that we do all of our cutting in-house. A shop that I set up starting, I think, 1991. So it's been a challenge to keep my people employed, especially this last year. So I've had to keep them employed. The other thing that I'm realizing, I only have 3 people that work with me. And the fact that I haven't been to Brazil in a year and a half means that I can't spend time in the shop doing my one-offs and creating new designs. But nonetheless, so one of the main cutter there has been with me since the beginning, and I'm kind of realizing, oh my God, he's going to want to retire one of these days. And I'm encouraging him. I say, look, man, what we create in our shop is so unique and different levels and things that I've invented. We need to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah, he needs an apprentice, because
yes,
we're very worried about that.
Yes, but here's the thing. Here's what I could do, and what I hope to do is, when I create the lapidary school around in the related quartz area, because nobody's cutting there. And as Eric said, we can start with the beads and work up from there. But what I can do with my main cutter, who's one of the best cutters in Brazil, because you just get good after so much experience, I would employ him to be the teacher, the professor, to get things going. And that would be a great way for him to pass on his knowledge. Obviously, he couldn't teach the tricked out things we're doing right away, but we may find that student that really enjoys it and has the affinity and, can progress. So that's in my plan, is when we get that school going, is to use my team as the first professors.
I'll take you to Ethiopia, Brian. You're gonna train.
Yeah, of course. If I have
we
time,
need to share that knowledge.
Well, to get started, I would definitely be hands-on.
we have a lot of aspirations in East Africa as well. So yeah, it's you really need great local partners, and you can't just ship faceting machines and dump them there. Like you can create facilities all day, but until there is training, support, someone to repair the machines when they inevitably break and the laps will wear out. Like, this is so much more than just, hey, let's set up a few machines. Like, there's so much involved. So I'm frustrated that we haven't made more inroads, but and I know Susan probably has and Hewan probably have very similar aspirations for why can't we just have people start cabochoning? But we are having trouble even getting tumblers to our electricity is an issue. Like, you plug a machine in and 2 days later you can burn the motor because of the power fluctuation. So like, there's a lot, if you haven't been there, if you don't know what the realities are, it can seem like, well, this is such a simple solution, but it actually is. There's a lot of challenge in establishing this, but it is a goal. It is absolutely a stretch goal. I'm sure Stuart would agree. This is definitely something we want to pursue, because it is. I see no reason why Africa couldn't become a major cutting center and be, as Eric said, a good business decision, not just from a social responsibility standpoint, but it makes business sense. So it's an ongoing discussion. I'm sure we can kind of keep going, but this is why I value this group. Going back to the very first question that I think Allison posed, like, what did we learn from each other? And I am continuously humbled every time we get together about what I don't know, and understanding the scope and the vastness of still what we have to kind of work on and accomplish. But you guys give me hope, and I really appreciate everything that you are doing in your own sort of corners of the world, or your own focus, your own just laser focus. This is what we can do, and we're better together. We amplify together far more than we would just be able to do that, just individually. I think Eric said that earlier. So I didn't want that opportunity to go by without saying how grateful I am for this group, for the people who are pursuing the incredible task of, like, where do my materials come from and how do I make responsible decisions? That's not an easy path. It's far easier to just buy for the sparkle and buy for color, and that's a pretty pink, but when you start digging in and asking questions, it gets challenging. But I think we've all realized the value of asking those questions and why we do what we do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I think we need to somehow come up with the genius, and can we TikTokify or create a catchy song on becoming a polisher, a cutter, a preformer, a blocker, a cabber, some.
It's funny. I was just thinking something similar. It's like, because Stuart mentioned how even in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is one of the great cutting centers of the world.
Because of what culturally Sri Lanka means in the gem fastening, right? It's culturally it's more welcome, but even there the challenge exists.
Well,
right?
And Stuart is saying even the young people there don't want it. So yes, have to make it cool. maybe it's a matter of they're working, but you take breaks to go do your TikTok or whatever. I don't know.
Stuart's going to have to learn to do a little dance on a gem cutter.
Oh my God, there it is.
Well, my teenage daughters can maybe help with that, so I'll recruit them to maybe we can come up with some sort of dance that like incorporates like the faceting moves. And I think we got this.
Yeah, because all the aspects along that whole supply chain. If we can make every one of those people feel cool because they're participating in what our whole message is, if we can link it all together, be a part of this movement, be a part of this family, this tribe.
I'm telling you.
Do your part.
I'm fascinated to see how just like even a hairstyle can just become popular. Something that wasn't even like, why would I cut my hair like that? And now it's in touch. It went viral.
Brian, seriously, me and Ian are working on this Look at the effort, man.
This has been such a good event, actually, and we're so grateful for our audience being here and contributing to this whole mentality around the industry. We've learned so much from each other and from you, and grateful. Like Monica said, very humbled to be part of this.
Are we going to meet at tables after this, or can we just keep talking here? I mean,
is this the end?
I need to talk to Eric about certain things.
I think we're just at 1 hour, and if any of the audience out there has any other questions, type them in now, real quick.
Yeah.
Not then we can adjourn this and go back to the tables. And if there's anybody that has questions, then you can meet at the tables also.
Perfect.
And I don't.
No one answered the question about the ion exchange rate. What happened there?
Because no one understood it.
It was meant to raise, curiosity.
Well, it did raise my curiosity, but.
Well, okay, so the answer is I don't know.
Oh, well, there you go.
It was a trick question.
Right.
No, but actually, in the Paraiba tourmaline, the manganese is what makes it purple.
Okay.
And so the reason why the Cuprian tourmalines are heated is to remove that red component. And so the manganese, in the heating process, it goes from an Mn+3, it's reduced to an Mn+2. The red goes away, leaving only the copper.
Wait,
We
can
love
you
giving science.
slow down? I want to, hold on, can you please, from the top.
This is a test.
He's gonna quiz us all later.
Don't worry, it's going to be in a TikTok.
Wow, that's it. You see?
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. I know that officially this ends at 11, but I don't know that I think you can still go to your tables and they still work. So we might as well try that.
Yes. So thank you, Lisa, Amanda, Allison for joining in. Jessica just said something great. Well, whoever wants to go to the tables, just continue the conversation. We can jump around. I may barge in on someone else's table besides me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
For listening.
Thank you, everyone.